think that we do, and obviously for employers and employees, ensuring that within that tighter labour market, having those particular skills to ensure that they are work ready and job ready to actually start those roles is absolutely essential. With many anecdotal examples where employers are having to re-recruit for roles or go back out to tender to find the right candidates, either after interviewing or shortlisting, or they've had an incredibly poor response rate to adverts. And that's around particularly, some of the focus outside of those sort of job advertisements, that it's not just about the job title, about what you see at the very top of the banner. It's about the transferable skills and the skill sets that employers require of these individuals going into that labour market. So being absolutely clear in job descriptions around where specific keys or skills are required. Obviously experience is incredibly important, but if that experience isn't necessarily matched with the appropriate skills, then employers will continue to have that issue of having to reinvest in either additional personnel to complement it, or wait for those employers to undertake reskilling. And obviously, when you're in such a tight labour market where you might be competing for candidates, as we know in a candidates market, time is of the essence. So it's incredibly key to make sure that your initial outset is to focus on ensuring that those individuals have the right skills, and that you have been very clear with employers around what they're expected to do. And obviously, what's key around this is Horsefly in particular for us. Obviously, not just as an organisation, but as a body that is very interested and wants to understand the trends and peaks and troughs around the labour market. Being able to use something like Horsefly to actually compare the skill sets that individuals are saying that they have compared to what the actual advertisements and vacancies are saying employers requesting. So just as a sort of quick snapshot here, this is just some analysis that we've previously done for a related project around the Liverpool City region, Freeport, which some of you might have heard of in the news, and obviously just looking at around some of the additional direct and indirect jobs that the project will provide within the lifetime of the project. But because it's so focused on kind of low carbon related roles, we've obviously done some analysis using Horsefly around that, and being able to actually understand, okay, where are these particular gender issues that we need to perhaps focus more on kind of STEM subjects? What's the experience breakdown in terms of those employers that are actually, a new entrants to the market, understanding those average salary trends across the broad kind of wide range of roles, but then in particular kind of that focus on the skills that these individuals are saying and how that actually matches up to the roles and role descriptions that we know are actually obviously coming down the line in terms of some of these, and how that then has a knock-on effect for sort of upskilling as well. So, I'm conscious of time. So just kind of in summary around where things stand, it's obviously a lot of people talk about the kind of great resignation, but in some respects, there are many people that argue that we are in a sort of bubble at the moment. We've obviously had a welcome increase in advertised vacancies over the last 12 to 18 months. But again, it's a double-edged sword if you can't recruit to actually match that demand. Industries and sectors have responded in kind to the way that we've lived our lives over the last 2 years. There's been increases in sort of, sectors such as logistics or e-commerce as a result. And obviously that has shifted the labour market to an extent. But the question is, does that go back and does that reset to pre-pandemic levels, or are we, maintaining where we are? So there's lots of questions there to sort of delve into. The kind of nature of roles as well, the temporary employment is likely to increase as employers await kind of greater stability within the labour market and the economy. The kind of takeaway for me would be around kind of stressing that skills should be at the kind of forefront of employee behaviour. And obviously that kind of back to that kind of bubble argument, there's arguments to be made, I suppose, that, individuals that are sort of an entrance to the market and labour market are almost been accustomed to potentially higher salaries. And I know Ian will talk about this in terms of the sort of the candidates market and the kind of signing on bonuses and retention benefits. But, is that necessarily a temporary measure, or is that here for a long time? Will that bubble burst? Employers are having to face up to that kind of prospect that industries are not always the most appealing. So whether it might be hospitality or something else, how we accompany that with the appropriate benefits to ensure that they can entice entrants to the market. So it's a very complicated and complex set of questions. Don't have all the answers, as I say, to that. We're honestly we're not sure because things change so rapidly. But hopefully that gives you a sort of top line overview in terms of some of the work that we're doing and some of the help that obviously tools like Horsefly have been to us to actually kind of understand some of that granularity. So I'll stop sharing my screen now, if that's okay. And obviously, yeah, there's a just link there as well. If you want to learn more about kind of city region, we can obviously issue these sorts of links and details afterwards. So I will just go back and stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Rob. It's always very interesting to listen to how large, complex organisations are addressing the market. And before we go to speak to Ian from TalkTalk, we do have a question for you, Rob. Sharad asks how we can segment the salary range based on experience. So I think it's related to one of the slides you were showing about the gender splits and when you're talking about skills. Do you also try to segment based on experience and salary?
We do. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that was just sort of a bit of a snapshot there where it was compiled, obviously using Horsefly. So you would run those particular roles, but when we do it, because that particular slide was focused on such a wide range of low carbon roles, it was all put into one. So if you want to get that granularity, you absolutely can, and that's something that we do look at for kind of experience levels. So you would rerun those searches around kind of understanding, I was doing some searches yesterday around, say, paralegals. If you were looking after, entrance to the kind of law profession, what their actual demanding salary would be, and then comparing that as their experience within those roles and their progression pathways alongside that increase, and how that actually then changes the salary market as well. So it's very key to be able to use and great to use those kind of tools to understand that, because it is very key that, as I'm sure Ian will talk about with that kind of market, it's having that understanding about what is the actual real baseline salary that we need to be actually hiring for within this particular industry, and how that then matches up with that candidate's expectations, but also that candidate's skill level and their experience level as well.
Excellent. Hopefully that answered your question, Sean. If anybody needs to follow up, all the contact details for Rob and Ian and myself and Horsefly will be included when we send out the thank you for being here later on. Let's move now to Ian. Ian from TalkTalk. Ian's got end-to-end accountability for talent throughout the entire employment life cycle. I think that includes talent acquisition, learning, development, apprenticeships, early careers. It sounds like absolutely a huge role. He's going to talk about TalkTalk's recruitment USP as a flexible employer being lost due to the pandemic, and TalkTalk finding itself in the pack and how they've responded to that. Ian, over to you.
Thanks, Adrian, and good afternoon, everybody. As Adrian said, Ian Turner, I've been at TalkTalk for just over 14 years now, so I'd like to say man and boy, but that'd be a bit of a lie probably. As just to follow on really from Rob, a lot of the challenges that we see will probably be very similar, and probably very similar to many of you on the webinar right now. So I'll take you through a few slides, as we said, and then hopefully it'll kind of spark some debates. Conscious of time, so I'll go through relatively pacey for people. Hopefully people can see that.
Yes, I can, Ian. It looks good.
Cool, thanks. So I guess just a very quick introduction to TalkTalk for those of you that may or may not be aware of us. We are a fibre connectivity provider for consumers and businesses right across the UK. We are currently headquartered in Salford at Soapworks, so you can see the picture there just to prove that on days it is actually sunny in Greater Manchester. So we're not too far down the road from Rob. As an organisation, we employ around about 1,800 colleagues, the vast majority of which are based from Salford. However, we do have some home workers. We also have people, smaller offices in the likes of London and Gateshead and Newbury. And of those 1,800 people, roughly half will be in our tech function. So that gives you a kind of a sense of the demographic of our organisation. And the roles, as I say, roughly half will be in our technical roles, but then we have everything in between, from commercial to sales to legal, HR, etc., as you would expect in a large organisation like ours. And right now, we're currently sitting at around about 110 vacancies. That is up from last year, as I'm sure you can imagine. It has been as high recently as sort of 150, and it is kind of fluctuating as we go through. So a very, very buoyant market from our perspective. And we talk about this talent crunch that everybody at the moment is facing. We've heard things like Rob mentioned around the Great Resignation. Very keen on some of the stats though from the ONS. There were some very interesting stats that came through last year that over the summer, the highest ever rate of people starting new jobs happened. There were over 2.2 million people started a new job last year. Yes, you would expect some of that as hospitality, etc., started to open back up after the pandemic. But actually, the number of vacancies across the UK were an awful lot higher than they were pre-pandemic. So it gives a view. I suppose you could talk that people during the pandemic have had time to really assess what they want from an employer, and that's making their decisions really relevant right now. So what are we seeing from a talk perspective? We are seeing a hugely increased volume of competition for talent, particularly in our world, in a kind of a tech and telecommunications world. The competition is very fierce. We're all kind of fishing in the same pool, so there is a shortage of great talent there. We're actually, especially in the Northwest, we are saturating that talent pool if we're going to be specific around looking for telco people, shall we say. Given that, when we're out there recruiting, one thing that we've seen dramatically increase is this rise in the counter offer. Now, again, as I said, with the increased competition, we are firmly camped on our competitors' lawn just as much as they are camped on ours, all trying to attract the same kind of talent. And we're starting to see, or we have been seeing over the last few months, an increase in counter offers, not just at the senior level, certainly a lot more kind of junior level than we would have done in the past. And that is because people are really paranoid about making sure they keep hold of their great talent. And, we've seen counter offers as much as sort of 30–40% as we go through, which is unheard of. We are seeing an awful lot of people being offered huge retention bonuses, etc. So it's getting very, very aggressive. And Rob did talk very much around this bubble. And it is a concern that, where are we going to be in 2 years' time when people are literally moving roles for sort of 20, 30, 40% increases. Now, at the start of this, Adrian did mention that, from a talk perspective, we were very early adopters of flexible working. It's long gone are the days when we've been Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And that was a USP for us pre-pandemic. And clearly the pandemic hasn't been kind to us in that respect, because we are now firmly back amongst the pack as more and more employers adopt flexible working. So that does then kind of say to us, right, we've got to reimagine the way that we do things. What are our USPs? There are lots of things out there that at the moment that are untried, untested. There's lots of talk about 4-day weeks and things like this, and shutting down for sort of Fridays over the summer, etc. And we are a value provider. We don't have armies of people, so we're kind of sitting back at the moment and just waiting to see how the market reacts to some of that, because we're trying to wait and see about data on things like productivity, etc., before we potentially make any moves. What have we done though over the last few months and last couple of years? Well, we actually probably about a year or two ago now, we started to actually build our own in-house search agency to really target the passive candidates. So rather than relying on job boards and agencies, etc., we wanted to bring a search mentality into TalkTalk, where we're out there actually headhunting the talent that we want to see. And that has had some tremendous impacts, as I'll talk about shortly. I mentioned about the USP and the flexible working. That still is part of it. You know, we're not really kind of saying to people how many days you've got to be in. We're leaving that to our line managers. It tends to be 2 to 3 days a week in the office and the rest of the time working from elsewhere, working remotely. But we've done an awful lot of work around being just a great employer, I think. And you can see a picture there of some of the team where we've got the Good Employment Charter through Andy Burnham in the Greater Manchester region. And that focuses on all sorts of things such as culture, the flexible working, the networks that we have, internal networks to support our colleagues. And they've really come to the forefront over the pandemic as well. So really focusing that your USP doesn't just have to be sort of salary or flexible working. There are an awful lot of things that are attractive to potential candidates out there. The other area that we've kind of moved into is really being strategic business partners with the organisation. You know, there's always a chance with things like recruitment that managers seem to think that there's an endless supply of great talent waiting at the door to come in, and actually being able to sit down now and work with our business leaders in terms of workforce planning, understanding, you know, what is the local talent market like. We know that the geographical boundaries are kind of blurring at the moment, but we're kind of a sociable bunch, and we like to see people living relatively close to our Salford HQ so that we can get those collaboration sessions face to face when we need them. But that's not always going to be possible with where the talent actually sits within the UK. So we can actually now sit down with our leadership teams using the Horsefly data to really start to strategically plan the types of roles that we're going to go for. So not just around geographical split, but we can start to look at things like, can we do 2-for-1s? Can we, you know, do we have to just replace like for like within our organisation? And it helps us from a talent perspective. It helps us, excuse me, around things like partnering with universities. So we clearly, with the Horsefly data, we can start to see the types of people that are out there. We can see which universities they tended to go to, etc. So we can really partner with strategically and target those universities that we want to work with. And then once we've found the candidates, you know, we've recently introduced some new assessment methodology, some relatively new innovative assessment methodology to make sure that when we find the individuals with the right CVs and the right backgrounds and capabilities, we're really matching that with their individual preferences to make sure that you know, that we're the right employer for them just as much as they are for us. So matching and trying to get the right first time approach to that recruitment has really helped. So as you can see from the right sort of image there, you know, quality of hire has definitely started to improve for sure. Speed is definitely there. I don't tend to put a huge amount of emphasis on speed because I'd rather focus on the quality of the candidate, albeit, you know, we are working really fast to fill those roles. And we're a lot more efficient because we're starting to use the data now to really target the market. And cost for us, since we brought the search piece in-house, has dramatically fallen because we are less dependent upon agencies and job boards. And, you know, we all know that search agencies can be extremely expensive when you start looking at senior hires. So actually, by having the team in place now that are doing that for us, it's actually saved us an awful lot of money on that kind of cost base as well. So just really in summary, you know, the talent market is incredibly competitive. We think it's probably likely to remain so for quite some time. Great talent out there definitely has a choice of where they go and work. So don't just think about salary and flexible working as your USP. I'm sure that everybody on this webinar right now and their organisations have a much wider offering, whether that comes to the culture of the organisation, the development and career progression that they can offer, the ESG stance of the organisation, etc. For our point, using Horsefly to aid the data-driven workforce planning decisions has definitely increased our ability to target the best passive talent that's out there within the right timeframes, and it's certainly increased the credibility of the function with our business partners. And then, as I said, bringing the search approach in-house has definitely helped elevate the talent acquisition to that more of a more strategic business partner rather than a reactive function, and definitely has reduced costs, as I mentioned then. And then clearly adding greater rigor to the candidate assessment selection process has helped to make sure that our right first time matching has definitely increased as we focus on candidate preference just as much as we focus on their capabilities as well. So I hope that's a useful, very quick summary. I will stop sharing so I can come down, and obviously if there's any questions for myself or for Rob, then clearly we'll be happy to.
Thanks, Ian. I have had a question in directly to me, and it might be one I'll put to Rob as well, actually. But Ian, you go first. How has the availability of labour market analytics changed the way the TA team is perceived by the business, the talent acquisition team?
It's definitely more of a business partner. You know, simply being able to have the data at hand just aids credibility. I think it enables us to challenge more. As I said before, you know, there's sometimes an assumption from hiring managers that there is literally an army of people waiting outside that we can just pull upon to go and fill all of our roles, particularly in the locations that we're after, and being able to sit down and actually say, you know, this is the state of the market. We regularly benchmark our roles anyway from a salary perspective, but actually having this almost like real-time data through Horsefly.
Rob, sorry, Ian, you've frozen. You froze for about 10 seconds. Can you just go back to the last two sentences? Yeah,
I was just going to say, so we regularly benchmark all of our roles and salaries anyway, but actually being, you know, that can, the way the market is being agile at the moment, that can change very rapidly. So having the data from Horsefly that we can run reports definitely helps that credibility from a data perspective as well.
Rob, perhaps I can ask you how you mentioned Horsefly a few times in your presentation. Yeah. How has having that data changed the way that your TA team is perceived by the business?
It's incredibly helpful. I mean, obviously, it just gives you know, professionals like myself that work in you know, wider employment programs, but working with our HR team, you know, singing the praises of sort of talent acquisition tools in general, you know, and the importance that the Horseflies give to us is just give us that kind of solution to a lot of problems where employers will say, look, you know, we're really struggling to hire X, Y, Z, or what's the actual issue in these particular areas. You know, and, you know, previously it would have just been, okay, well, look, let's continue to just go down the route of more job boards, more kind of advertising, whatever. But actually being able to you know, kind of hone in on some of those very granular sort of elements is incredibly important. And that's what kind of tools like Horsefly actually give us. So it's you know, really important, and it's, you know, just for my kind of own usage, you know, someone that's very interested in sort of labour market statistics and being able to sort of, as Ian said, their benchmark particular sort of roles and actually gain that sort of that onset of sort of trends and analysis. It's incredible. So yeah, we're very pleased about the kind of relationship we have with Horsefly.
Excellent. Erin has asked about using Horsefly to decide where to open new hubs and workplaces. Now, I know you're both based in the Northwest. I'm quite happy to answer that after you've finished answering Q&A. Erin, I'll come back to you, give you some examples of people who've used Horsefly in exactly that way. But let's go on to what Mart has asked. It's for you, Ian. What are the aspects of being a great employer that TalkTalk has focused on, and how TalkTalk has used Horsefly to target passive candidates?
Okay, so I'll answer the first part first then. So around what we've done to be a great employer. We use a system called Peakon. where we do every other month we'll run a staff survey just to look at our colleague NPS. So we really get qualitative feedback from our employees every other month around what we need to do differently, what we need to remember to do and continue to do. So we've got lots and lots of feedback, rich feedback coming through from there, of which we run action plans to make sure that we're a good employer. We have a number of different networks, employee networks across the organisation, whether that be things like Women in Tech, our BAME network, our neurodiverse network, just to help people feel really inclusive within the organisation. We've run crazy things like during lockdown, we had Mr. Motivator doing events for us so that we had people literally being active whilst they're all working from home. And then we've done things that we get very much involved in the community. So things like the Kickstart program recently, we brought about, I think it's around about 80 young people through on Kickstart, and we've managed to secure about 50 of them into permanent roles. So lots of things out inside in the community. We've got a big focus on the environment as well and sustainability. So all of these things combined help to make us a great employer, as well as obviously things like the flexible working. There was a second part, Adrian, remind me on the second part about Horsefly.
I was going to, the second part was, how has TalkTalk used Horsefly to target passive candidates?
So a couple of things it helps us to do. We will be able to kind of use the data to see where people are currently working. So we know then we can really go and target organisations where we know that those skill sets are prevalent. It will also help us, as I said earlier on, we've got a big desire to try and get as many people as we can living in the Northwest. We're very proud to be a Northwest employer. But actually, you know, there are occasions when we look at the data and it says those skill sets are in very, very small supply in the Northwest. So therefore, we can then start to go and look elsewhere where there are spots, maybe down in the Southeast and what have you, and start to target employees that way as well.
Excellent. I hope that's answered your question, Mark. A further question from Catherine. How have you tracked the use of Horsefly supporting recruitment decisions that you make? And I'll put that to you both, but Ian, can you go first?
Yeah, so we've been using Horsefly for only a relatively short period of time now, probably about sort of 6 months or so. But we're actually making sure now we report regularly on the number of people that we bring in directly as opposed to sort of through agencies, etc. So through the recruitment that we do through our talent acquisition business partners, then we track the amount of people that we've kind of utilised Horsefly. It's not a direct link because, as I say, it does. We use other methodologies as well, such as LinkedIn, but actually that data helps us to really target and hone in on those areas.
And Rob?
Sure, yeah. So similar to Ian, really. I mean, there's not always necessarily a direct link, but obviously as a combined authority, we work very closely with our local enterprise partnership, which is known as the kind of growth platform in the city region, and they're responsible for a lot of inward investment decision making. So we get lots of organisations that come to us and they say, okay, we want to open up XYZ in the city region, and then we provide that kind of analysis using Horsefly, and that then obviously has the knock-on effect that they obviously are then able to open up their, premises, understanding the kind of wider labour market and the access to talent within it. So that there isn't always that necessarily that direct link, but without a tool like Horsefly, we would never be able to provide that kind of data that actually has the sort of, intrinsic link to actually recruitment decision making for employers of all sizes. So so it's a pivotal sort of tool in that respect.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Aaron, I'll go back to your question about using it for location, and we are seeing a number of organisations working with facilities and TA to look at where hubs should be, or where offices should be open, or where locations, factories should be built, etc. There are some amazing examples, and we probably wouldn't do it service to just read them out now. So what we'll do, we'll come back to you, Aaron, and talk about some of those organisations. We'll give you some examples. But the one I would focus on that's been very highly publicised is a company called Ørsted, the world's first full green power generator. And they had to make some decisions around where to base sites near to wind farms that they were going to build. They did use Horsefly to decide where to build. They changed their mind from what their original facilities people were telling them based on Horsefly data, and they're crediting the use of Horsefly with over 40 million euros of savings in the employment market. So we will send you some information, Erin, and invite you to have a chat to talk about that if that's a key thing for you. But we're probably exhausted on time to run through a list of companies that are using it in a facility sense rather than a recruitment sense, although the two are obviously very closely matched. Everybody else, I'm going to say thank you. We do have the next webinar. It's going to be on the 23rd of March. It's going to be looking at the tools in your talent attraction box and whether or not people data and labour markets analytics data is going to be the primary tool in the box going forward. We're going to build more on the skills, career aspirations of people, looking at retention, avoiding resignation. And our presenters will be Shagan Gupta from WebHelp, and I'm really excited to have her. We're going to have an international view on this. And from Kelly Services, an RPO based in the UK, we will have Richard Bradley. So we will send out some marketing material on that, but Wednesday the 23rd of March, 12 noon UK time, same sort of format, over lunchtime, grab a sandwich, listen to some of the industry practice that's going on, pick up the best bits, and we really enjoyed having you all here listening to us. Thank you so much, everybody. Ian and Rob, just say big thanks for enabling us to stay to time. I'm not quite sure what was happening at the start, but that was great, and always best to keep promises, I think. So well done for accelerating through your slides.
No worries. I had my stopwatch on my phone here. I was like, oh, just make sure I don't go over time. So no, thanks for inviting us, and yeah, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Wouldn't be a live event without the odd little bit of stress at the beginning, would it?
I love it when there's a bit of stress at the beginning. I tell you the stress I had. I didn't say that to everybody on the webinar, but I had a tooth extracted an hour and a half before we started.
Oh dear.
So it probably wasn't that visible, but I'm feeling as if my face is twice the size it should be.
Oh no. Oh dear me.
Best laid plans, eh?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Just wait. Okay, I think it's just the three of us.
Yeah.
We've lost Tanya and Simon, but fine. So if we get any feedback, I'll give you some feedback. We don't ask the attendees to score the presenters or anything like that some other places do. So all you're going to get from me is a huge thank you for doing this. If anybody comes and asks to be connected, then obviously we'll pass them to you. And if likewise, if you pick up on any feedback from people about what we've just done and how we can do it better, then do let me know, and we'll build it into future webinars.
Amazing.
Will do.
All right. Apart from that, thank you so much, and speak soon.
Thank you. Good to meet you.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.